All right, this is actually live pictures now. So we're looking at it live. You can see that there is a lot of object throwing. Apparently, according to one of our previous guests, Reverend Tracy Blackman, the white nationalist groups are throwing full bottles of water. Earlier, they used brass knuckles and bats to attack members of the clergy, to attack members of anti-fascist groups who've come out to march against them, and against members of Black Lives Matter, all of whom have converged on this park and now spilled into the street, a nearby corner near the University of Virginia, to try to counter this, what they're calling Unite the Right rally, a violent rally at that. Join me now, Max Boot, Senior Fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations, Kurt Bardella, former media consultant for Breitbart.com, Daily Beast politics reporter Aswin Subasang, and former Chief White House ethics lawyer, President George W. Bush, Richard Painter. Richard, I'm going to start with you. You've been tweeting about this, and you've had some pretty strong words for those who are out there. If you could reiterate those for our audience.
Well, this is very similar to what happened on the streets of Germany in the early 1930s. This is the face of fascism in the United States. And it is directly the responsibility of this administration in the White House. I've been a Republican for 30 years, but we are the party of Abraham Lincoln and George W. Bush, Ronald Reagan. We are not the party of fascism in America, and we are going to have to reject this. We need to demand today that President Trump fire Sebastian Gorka, Steve Bannon, all the other alt-right neo-fascists in his White House. This is Breitbart News, what you are on the streets of Charlottesville. And I, as a Republican, I will remain a Republican, but I will not support fascism, and I will call for the impeachment of this president if he does not fire the neo-fascists in his White House immediately. And
Aswin, is there any, discomfort inside of the White House with the presence of Sebastian Gorka, who is linked to Vitesse Iran, which is a Nazi-linked organization from Hungary, with the presence of Steve Bannon, who ran the website where the alt-right found its home? Is there any chance that these people have job insecurity at this point?
If they have a job insecurity, it has nothing to do with that or what's going on today. And look, I've covered a lot of these different white nationalist events and scuffles, some of which have turned violent, and they're upsetting and disturbing whenever they happen. But look, just to be mildly fair to the White House and President Trump for a moment, I think it's a little bit unfair to blame President Trump for stuff like this. I mean, if he doesn't denounce this on his Twitter feed, while he's more than willing to denounce a botched or bloody facelift, then yeah, go ahead, call him out for that. But I think you're on way more fair and objective. I think you're on way more fair ground if you denounce this administration for its racist crackdown on voting rights, or the intention to uproot and kick out as many immigrant families as they want to. And by the way, those are policies that far predated Trumpism, and I would like to hear what Richard and Max have to say about those things that have been long a part of the Republican DNA, long before President Trump came about and started saying vulgar words.
Richard?
I am happy to respond to that. I have not always agreed with everything that Republican administrations do, but we have never, ever seen rhetoric similar to what has come out of this White House. We never had anyone like Steve Bannon or Sebastian Gorka in the Bush White House, someone like Sebastian Gorka who dared to wear a Nazi medal to the president's administration. That is disgusting. We never would have tolerated that. And we can disagree. I disagree with my own party on some issues. But we never would have had any of this in the Bush White House. And these people need to be fired immediately. And this is Breitbart News. Breitbart News is a racist organization, and it needs to be acknowledged as such. They should not be given preferential access to the White House, which is what they are now getting under Steve Bannon. And once again, Bannon needs to be fired. Sebastian Gorka and the rest of the fascists out, or we are going to have to remove this president. Our democracy depends upon it. And talking about President Bush or Hillary Clinton and trying to compare this, that is a completely inappropriate comparison to what really is a serious threat to our democracy in 2017.
And Max, give you a chance to respond as well. Is it sort of unfair to tie the president to what we're seeing here in Charlottesville?
Well, I don't think that President Trump is directly responsible for instigating, the events in Charlottesville, but I think it is fair to say that he has catered to the alt-right crowd, including by hiring some of their champions in the White House, by pursuing policies like not only the crackdown on illegal immigration and mass deportations, but also he wants a crackdown on legal immigration, which is something that Republicans going back to Ronald Reagan have always favored, and all of a sudden Trump is opposed to it. He wants to challenge affirmative action in court. So there is no question that he is pursuing policies that that elicit support from people like this, even though he's not directly responsible for what's going on here. And, you know, I agree with Richard Painter, somebody who was also a lifelong Republican up until November 9th. I mean, I was a foreign policy advisor to John McCain, Mitt Romney, Marco Rubio. I mean, I couldn't imagine any of those men in the White House employing somebody like Steve Bannon or Sebastian Gorka, or trafficking in some of the hatred or conspiracy mongering that Donald Trump traffics in. What the Republican Party has stood for since its founding in the 1850s. This is a, you know, there have been these fringe elements out there all the time, but you know, the difference with Trump is that he's brought them into the center of power. And
Kurt, you know, and by the way, if you think you're seeing guns in the hands of people, you are. Virginia is an open carry state. You're seeing more clashes. Just producers. Is this live or is this tape? Is this live? This is live. This is happening right now. You're seeing these clashes, and some of the people that are in the streets of Charlottesville are armed. You've seen people carrying long guns. This is an open carry state, so this is an incredibly dangerous situation, incredible violence. It's shocking to me personally, just having been in Baltimore, that the police presence is so scant. When we were in Baltimore, there were tanks on the streets of Baltimore. We are seeing a rather thin police presence when we're seeing actual violence, and from reports that we've gotten on the ground, including violence against clergy people, against members of the clergy. I want to go to you on this, Kurt Bardella, because that is sort of the question, right? I mean, you had the Republican Party bring in, starting with Nixon's Southern strategy, this idea of co-opting what used to be Southern Democrats who objected to Lyndon Johnson's moves on civil rights, who objected to the idea of desegregation, and sort of courting them and saying that there is a silent majority that is for law and order, and sort of softly, in softer language, targeting people of color and immigrants, etc. We know there was a reaction against the Immigration and Nationalization Act of '65. We know that pulled certain elements out of the Democratic Party and into the GOP. Did Breitbart do something substantially new in terms of what that entity and entities like it brought to the table?
I think what they brought to the table was, for the first time in the 21st century, in a digital era, they brought together a congregating central platform to unite all of these voices, racist voices, and channel them and direct them and focus them in one place day, that they could go multiple times a day and have content that was written solely for them, to make them feel like it was okay to feel the way that they feel, to inspire them to take action, to inspire them to rally behind a candidate that they thought was one of their own, who uses coded language, who brings on people inside his team, who subscribe to their beliefs, and really they use policy as a mechanism to spread the virus of racism, you know, and targeting minorities and immigrants, and laying the groundwork for volatile situations like this to happen. And the fact of the matter that President Trump at this second has yet to speak about this tells you that every second that goes by that President Trump is silent, and it's not like he's too busy. He's out on vacation, golfing, tweeting. There's no reason why, after what happened last night, that the White House would be silent, if not for the fact that they are sitting there letting this happen. The longer they go silent, the more complicit that they are. And
Asselin, to that point, when the Ferguson uprising took place, and again, there were tanks in the streets, water cannons, lots of arrests, including of journalists, President Obama, who was, at the time it was summer, he was on vacation in Martha's Vineyard, had to come to a camera and say something. The fact that the President of the United States has yet to say anything